You might have read the title of this video and thought, I bet I've heard all there is to say about Destiny's campaign. I bet this man of presumably acting is going to repeat the same stuff I've already heard, right? Wrong! Well, my friend, let me tell you, I am a man of acting. But aside from just saying Destiny's campaign is bad, I think it's far better for us to understand why it's bad. And I mean really fucking bad. Like, it's honestly one of the worst stories I've ever experienced, and even calling it a story is far too generous for how astronomically garbage Destiny's campaign is.
You're garbage. And you know it.
This game is one of the rarest pieces of shit that has ever been released onto the market. Calm your tits, fanboys. I ain't talking about the multiplayer, the raids, strikes, or any of that. Just the single-player campaign. You see, it's an intricately woven cloak of shit, and when we examine that, we as gamers learn what it is we love about video games, what makes us invested in them, what makes us care, and what makes us fanboys. You'll see a lot of comparisons to the storytelling and structure of other games, TV shows, etc., and especially Bungie's Halo games, as there are many parallels between them. Rest assured, watching this video, you'll get some laughs, you'll get some new knowledge, and you'll get something to think about. That's the point of all stories, right? So without further unnecessary exposition, let's, kill the darkness, level up the light thing, and go be the Destiny guy. It's 2010. Bungie, coming off their final entry in the billion-dollar world-renowned franchise known as Halo, has left their parent company Microsoft to seek creative freedom, new opportunities, and a massive project they've had in mind since 2008. But instead of doing all that, they signed on with Activision. There you go. That's the context of Destiny, or the creation of Destiny the game. Want some more? So ActBro hadn't played Destiny in about a year, and I don't know if our PS4 has terrible download times or if the file was that big, but the update took 9 hours to download. I've never seen anything ever take 9 fucking hours to download. But see, what I just gave you in about 27 seconds was something Destiny didn't. Give you the fucking context.
Context matters.
Bungie. What do I mean by that? Well, think about any other sci-fi fantasy series set in its own world or universe, and think about the first entry into that series. For example, Halo 1 starts off pretty simple. It introduces the main characters, the conflict, setting. Halo 2 expands on all of that, bringing more context to the story, and Halo 3 finishes up with a climactic finale. How about Star Wars A New Hope? We get interested to the universe, the main villains, the heroes, all the different aliens. It's established this is in a galaxy far, far away a long, long time ago, so just about anything goes. Then Empire Strikes Back raises the tension, puts the characters through some challenges, shows us more of the universe, and Return of the Jedi finishes with a climactic finale, tying up all the loose ends. Here's one more example, Harry Potter. The first book is mostly about introducing Harry and the reader to the wizard world. It sets up and introduces a lot of what is expanded on later, and with each new book, we learn more about the wizarding world, as well as the main conflict with Voldemort. You see the pattern between these series? They set up their universe's world and lore over the course of multiple installments. This makes it feasible for the average person to digest it and know what the fuck is happening and what the rules of the fictional universe are. As your brain is being fed information about this sci-fi or fantasy universe, you're able to become invested in it because it's consistent, because those stories take the time necessary to build them up so they have emotional impact and weight. You can't just cobble together a huge sci-fi world and throw it into someone's face when they don't know fuck all about Destiny and expect them to get it or care. Destiny tries to do all that world building in a single installment right from the get-go, but because it tries to do so much, it can't even provide the most basic of context. Who are we? Where are we? What are we doing? And why is it important? These were questions I had at the beginning of my playthrough and they were never answered. Imagine being tossed into Warcraft, Star Wars, Harry Potter, The Witcher, Lord of the Rings, or any other sci-fi universe and not having the slightest fucking clue what the world is all about. Destiny throws you to the wolves and doesn't give a fuck whether you know what you're doing or not. It's like the game itself doesn't care. Immersion can only happen if the story behind the world is compelling. Sure, all these different aliens could be interesting, the lore behind the Traveler and its fight with the darkness could be interesting, if the speaker would fucking tell us about it, but none of it is, because we can't relate to it. No reason to care, so there's no immersion. And because there's no tangible villain or tangible good guy, we don't even have a side to root for or against. There's no bad pirate that we really want to see get taken down. There's no troubled teenager that we hope finds his destiny. I mean, there's nothing to root for. At the very least, Bungie should have implemented the codex into the game itself, because at least that would be something. Perhaps one of the reasons Destiny's story and campaign was set up to fail is because it was designed as a 10-year game, from what we've heard. So remember when Halo 2 had one of the most hellish developments ever? Well, imagine if that was a game with a 10-year plan. Instead of a set deadline that absolutely could not be delayed. Tell you what, Halo 2 would have turned out like shit because, hey, we got all this extra time to work on the game. Who cares if we put out something that's subpar on release, as long as people eat it up? And they did. Destiny attempted to introduce its entire universe and every aspect of it in a single game with a freaking 5-hour-long campaign. It tries to bombard you with all this information and exposition without any clue of pacing, and it just makes the whole experience confusing as hell, so it ended up paying a huge price for that. But you might be thinking, Actman, Destiny does give you context for what you're doing. It's got these cutscenes and a bunch of dialogue telling you what's going on. You know, okay, you're right. But who the fuck cares about what happens in Destiny? Seriously, who played this and wasn't invested in the characters? Who played this and found it interesting? Nobody. I don't even think you could fake being interested in something like this. It's so vapid, and there's no charm. The cutscenes are nothing more than people just standing around talking. Where's the action? Where's the tension? Where's the mystery? Where's anything? One of Destiny's biggest flaws is how incredibly boring it is. There's absolutely nothing and no one to care about. And this is caused by another crippling flaw, which is Destiny's extreme overuse of exposition. There are exposition dumps around every corner of the game. Walking by an NPC, exposition. Buying something, exposition. Scanning something, exposition. Loading screen, exposition. Walking to your objective, exposition. Item description, exposition. Just calm the fuck down. Stop explaining shit to me. Any mission, any NPC you talk to, every briefing and ending is all just fucking exposition. Jesus Christ, can one of you just tell me about how your day was? Can we talk about our feelings or something? Our families or the pain we feel because of this situation that we're all in? Anything besides the constant stream of never-ending explanations. Rod Serling, the creator of Twilight Zone, once said, "There are a million different ways to write expository dialogue. A million different ways to give the audience the information they need in a captivating and interesting way. Destiny doesn't even do that once." Anytime something potentially interesting is happening, it's ruined because it's explained in the same lifeless, droning, monotone way as everything else. It's like anytime a character is speaking, it's like they don't fucking care.
These guardians show us what we are, what we have always been, and what we will be again.
We shall cut into the heart of this infestation,
Yeah!
retrieve the icon,
Yeah!
and burn any flood that stand in our way.
Nobody's shouting or screaming or, making a big deal about this. They're all just lifeless drones. Look at this part in Halo 2. So after you clear out the hangar bay, you see a station explode in the distance. Cortana and Lord Hood discover the Covenant are bringing bombs onto the different stations. The game is letting you know there's a bomb on the Cairo station by showing you another station exploding. If we were to rewrite this to Destiny's standards, it'd simply be, "Chief, we've detected a bomb on the Cairo, and you need to defuse it by taking Cortana and putting her in your hand and then pressing the button. After you defuse the bomb, the Cairo station will be safe, and we will thank you for saving us." I mean, do you see the difference? This is something you'll learn day one of any fiction writing class. Show, don't tell.
Couldn't resist, mate.
Destiny needs to show us what the darkness will do to the planets it consumes. It needs to show us what the fuck happened to Earth, or what the other parts of Earth are like. Why is this the last city? What about the other cities? What does the rest of Earth look like? It needs to show us why we should care. What is at stake? Who is our enemy, and why? If you don't show us who the bad guys are, or what makes them bad, or why we should care about what we're doing, then there's no tension in the story and it's all meaningless. The most remarkable achievement of Destiny is how it manages to create what I believe to be the worst line of dialogue ever written. Now it's going to take me a minute or two to explain why I don't have time to explain. Now it's going to take me a minute or two to explain the grotesque monstrosity that is this sentence. I mean, there have been games that had super cheesy dialogue.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. But enough talk. How about you?
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
And some movies have unintentionally hilarious moments.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah!
Underwear man, come on.
How sad to work so hard for so little.
Sad for you!
But this goes beyond that.
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
So first off, there's the immediate contradiction of her actions against her words. Well, bitch, your incredibly slow pace, the boring music, disinterested tone of voice, and huge pauses in between suggest you do have time to explain. And the time you stepped on a dead robot, you could have explained why you didn't have time to explain. Secondly, we have a paradox. Alright, let's look at this and bear with me here because the awfulness gets a bit complicated. I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain. Well, you just explained why you don't have time to explain, and that's because you don't have time to explain. Are you still following me here?
I'm not reading you clearly.
Third, you've been stalking us the entire game, and this is what you had to say? Why show up if you aren't even going to give us a reason for why you were following us in the first place? Fourth, this is the most blatant fuck you to the audience I've ever seen. Destiny's been nothing but expository dialogue up to this point, but now the writers don't even want to give you the shitty exposition you won't care about. Fifth, the line is trying to raise tension or something, but it's so horrible it distracts from whatever she says afterwards. And finally, this line perfectly summarizes the story of Destiny. It's beyond my feeble comprehension to imagine what the hell they were thinking when they wrote this, but I wouldn't be surprised if the humans who worked on the script were actually robots trying to instigate mass hysteria and confusion amongst the gaming community. When I reviewed Halo 5 Guardians, I was certain that game had one of the worst AAA stories in recent memory. I even made 6 freaking videos on it. I thought it was that bad. But after playing Destiny, I'm truly shocked. I did not know how bad this really was. Even though Halo 5 is a complete mess from start to finish with huge crippling flaws, bad writing, and many other things, it actually is a story. It has a beginning, middle, and end. A series of events. Characters are put through turmoil, and you as the player have to overcome that. There's an obvious goal in what you're doing. It had some cool cutscenes, it tried new things. The dialogue is a bit forced, but it's still trying to tell a story. It's trying to do something, you can tell that. And there's a big difference between something that just doesn't go over well and something like Destiny that doesn't even try. Apathy is death. It's the bare minimum of what you could call a story. Experiencing it is on the level of reading a Wikipedia summary, where it just tells you what is happening. There's no rising action, there's no hook, there's nothing that a normal story has in Destiny. It's just exposition. But you know, every story's gotta start off with a hook, a bang, a bada boom. And what Destiny starts off with is some seriously weak shit. I mean, I don't think this could bench the bar by itself. And I've got muscles on top of my muscles, on top of my... So it begins with a cutscene on Mars and 3 guys find a giant ball. Then Captain Exposition tells us the giant ball does good things. Giant ball, however, also has an enemy called the Darkness. And that's bad. So you're revived and you gotta guard giant ball because reasons. So you'd expect some sort of cool badass intro. Something that gets your blood pumping and trigger finger happy, but no! What you start off with is fucking busy work. Like those quests you get after you beat a faction in Skyrim, those busy work quests that are just like, yeah, go kill a fucking bear and then come back. That's what you're doing. After killing some group of robots or aliens that act like the Flood and scanning something, you're done? Like that's the mission? I mean, I was constantly squinting at the TV just thinking like, what? And that's generally not a good thing to be thinking when experiencing a story. You see, the beauty of video games is that rather than being an outsider looking into a book, a movie, or TV series, you, the player, are an active participant. You have personal control over what happens, or at least you feel like it. There's a feeling of power as you fight against whatever evil force is the main antagonist. But in Destiny, you don't feel empowered. I mean, you're shooting a million guys, but for what? Hey, you know what would have been way better and would have fixed half of Destiny's story? A prologue section where we fight that climactic battle the speaker could tell us about, where our character is fighting alongside hundreds of other Guardians in this epic intro that hooks us from the get-go. We learn to feel some sympathy for the Guardians and the Traveler and the Light, while also seeing firsthand what the darkness is capable of and what horrors lurk within it, and why we should care about this premise to begin with. Then when we get revived, instead of Ghosty McGhosterson being like, "You've been dead a long time, little guy," he'd say something like, "You died in a great climactic battle, don't you remember?" So you'd feel important. You'd get to experience the biggest event that led to the current situation, and other people would treat you with respect and admiration because you died in that big fucking war and now you're back. What video games have that all other forms of storytelling don't is interaction. You're experiencing firsthand the events of the game, and hopefully the game is enticing you to discover, to want to know more, to be invested. This can be a double-edged sword. If the game is as boring as a conversation about paint drying, then not only do you lose the immersion, but also the desire to keep playing. I'm constantly wondering, what is the goal? What is the point of Destiny? But let's look at Halo Combat Evolved for comparison. Well, you start off as a super soldier, you discover a giant ring, and as you do, aliens board your ship. So your first priority is to clear the ship, get in a life pod, and land on the ring. In every level, your goals are clear. Link up with the surviving Marines to coordinate an effective resistance. Rescue Captain Keyes aboard the Truth and Reconciliation. Find the silent cartographer that leads to Halo's map room, fight your way to Halo's map room, and so on. You're never confused about what you're doing, and your purpose is always clear. You're fully aware about what you're doing and why you're doing it. We may not know everything about this mysterious ring, we may have questions that weren't answered, we may not understand why these things are happening around us, but the important thing is the player knows what they are doing throughout the entirety of the game. Now, let's look at Destiny. Why are we going from planet to planet with only a vague explanation of what it is we're doing there? Why is the Traveler so important? Why are characters knowingly withholding information from us? So many questions are left unexplained. There is no context or understanding our players' actions because all we're doing is hopping around the goddamn galaxy doing random busy-ass work for no apparent reason. So let me try to explain Destiny's plot. Basically, you're a Guardian that defends Earth and the Traveler from the darkness, so what you gotta do is a bunch of random stuff, and you need to get a Gate Lord's head to get into the Black Garden. What are these things? We don't know. You kill 3 robots, and all these random people you've never seen before celebrate as if something important happened. And that's pretty much it. That's it. I don't even know what to say. What the fuck did I just play today?
I can make things out of clay and lay by the bay, I just may.
Some people might be saying, well, the single player doesn't matter because it's the multiplayer and the raids. That's what Destiny is really about. And you're right. But if the story, the campaign, can't get you invested or immersed in the world, then there's no immersion in the multiplayer either. Let's look at some other games with great multiplayer components. Battlefront 2. You're taking place in huge battles across many of the recognizable and important locations in the Star Wars universe. Black Ops 1. You're fighting Nazi zombies in an old theater in Germany. The 4 characters represent 4 of the biggest factions in the war. You also have this hilariously awesome section where you fight zombies in the Pentagon playing as Fidel Castro, Richard Nixon, Andy McNamara, and John F. Kennedy.
Zombies. Gentlemen, at times like these, our capacity to retaliate must be and has to be massive to deter all forms of aggression.
Halo 3, Spartans are fighting each other in real locations within the Halo universe. Custom Robo. For some reason, people in the future use miniature robots to settle their differences. Each map is fought within a digitalized background. Did you notice how all those examples of multiplayer came directly from what each game is about? Or had some relevance to the world they take place in, and therefore had some level or feeling of importance? A connection? So what is Destiny's campaign about, and how does it base the multiplayer off of that? Well, you're shooting robots and aliens in space, and that's it. Well, why should I feel invested or excited when I've shot robots and aliens in space and a million other games that were far more interesting? What's special about this? I'm not saying all multiplayer components need to have some great epic story. What I'm saying is if a game has an interesting premise, story, and setting, then the multiplayer component will feel interesting and cohesive, but Destiny doesn't. The majority of the game is just kind of you with your thumb up your ass doing who the fuck knows, and that's really not an interesting premise or way to play a game, is to just be constantly confused about everything. There is that unwritten rule in video games where a bad story can be forgiven if the gameplay is good, and you might be thinking this applies to Destiny, but it don't. So as a player, you don't feel invested in what you're doing, so you don't really care, which is bad enough, but the way they designed these missions is atrocious. I will say the levels are beautiful, the skybox is vast and impressive, but apart from that, Destiny is basically just a bunch of chores. The game starts off with you doing quests that don't add or give any meaningful insight into what we're doing or the world we're in. The levels feel as empty and lifeless as I can't believe I'm making this comparison. I never want to bring this game up again. Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts. There's no reason to explore. In fact, most of the time I found myself rushing through everything just to get the mission over with. Why have these huge, beautiful, wide open landscapes if there's nothing in them? The gunplay is decent, but it's basically a cheap knockoff of Borderlands. You gotta select few guns, a burst rifle, precision rifle, an automatic rifle, revolver, sniper, fusion rifle, shotgun, rocket launcher. But despite all the different variants of these base weapons, they all feel the same. In Borderlands, within a few quests, you'll get this really cool shotgun called the Wave. It's noticeably unique. The game doesn't withhold its interesting, unique weapons from you until you've grinded for X amount of hours. For Destiny single player, I only had access to these basic weapons, and I just got tired of using them. I know there's exotics and other cool shit, but I didn't get none of that in the single player campaign, and that's what I'm reviewing. Destiny is like Borderlands without the fun guns, which is what makes Borderlands a good fucking game. The campaign left such a bad taste in my mouth, I don't have the patience to go through and grind to get the good guns in the hopes that the shit I just played could be slightly more fun. First impressions are everything, you only get to make them once. And Destiny's first impression was puke. How about the absurdly short length? Let's talk about that, huh? How the fuck did people get suckered into buying DLC for this game when the single player was like 5 hours long? How did you wash the taste of shit out of your mouth and decide to open your wallet again? I genuinely want to know, how did they trick you like that? It's clear making as much fucking money as possible and tricking people into buying DLC was the main goal. The coolest mission has you uncover some ancient Crota sword. Even though the writing is still terrible, this was the only time I was ever interested in what was going on. Oh, but if you want to follow up on that slightly interesting side story, you gotta pay more for it, kid. I mean, this is just shady as hell. About 75% of the gameplay revolves around sitting in a room killing waves of bad guys. It's monotonous, it's uncreative, and it's boring as hell. Hey, how about like a stealth section? Maybe it's dark and you've got some sort of camo power-up and you gotta sneak through and kill enemies silently without being detected. Or how about a cool, badass, guns-a-blazing vehicle section where you can team up with allies in huge epic battles? What about something in space? I mean, we got these ships that we're always on. How about a cool space battle? Can I do something that isn't just shooting waves of enemies? I will say the different aliens and robots are pretty interesting from a design standpoint. They all got weaknesses and strengths and react differently when parts of their bodies are shot off, and you fight each faction a little differently. But the game is so short you just barely get a taste of what each faction is about. It's like they knew they were going to release DLC to compensate for the surprisingly barren, lifeless, lackluster experience and pad out the missing content. Oh wait. In a game where people universally say, Yeah, the story sucks, but the gameplay is good. I'm shocked to see just how basic the missions and level design are. There's nothing that surprises you, there's nothing that gets you excited, and it quickly wears out its welcome when you're using the same boring-ass guns to kill the same mobs of enemies.
Hour after hour after hour after hour.
I mean, the Sparrow is cool to ride around in, but that's only when you're not crashing into invisible walls and kill barriers that, of course, have to be everywhere. Overall, the gameplay is just boring, bland, highly overrated, and it's not nearly good enough to excuse Destiny's train wreck of a campaign. The most impressive thing that Bungie demonstrated with Destiny is that you can have all the money in the world, you can have huge marketing campaigns, you can have a great reputation, a following of dedicated fans, the financial support of a titanic game publisher, you can have an incredibly talented team with fantastic writers, composers, leaders, you can have 5 solid years to plan out your vision perfectly. You can have everything you need to make the best game possible and still manage to completely fuck it up. You see, the whole point of a story is not just entertainment, but it can also be a source of learning. It can give you a moral or a theme that sticks with you.
Pussies don't like dicks, because pussies get fucked by dicks. But dicks also fuck assholes.
Maybe there's something poetic in the story, or it has really nice imagery that you can look at and remember how you felt. A really good story will give you something to think about. It'll make you feel, what's it called?
Cold.
Emotions. Playing through Destiny's single player, and I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying this, is the most lifeless, stale, inconsequential thing I've ever experienced. And if your goal is to entice people into a game with a 10-year plan, sure as shit won't convince people like me who want something of substance, something of value.
The Vex are taking control of the surface to protect the Black Garden. Mars could soon
I said
be worse than
substance. But just to show I'm not alone in my train of thought, I've invited some of my Patreon supporters to answer a simple question. At what point in Destiny did you feel the strongest emotion, and what was that emotion? At the end of it, what was it about Destiny that left the greatest impact on you?
Oh boy, did this game actually have any emotion to begin with? I honestly don't know.
I'd have to say the strongest emotion with Destiny was disappointment.
Yeah, I didn't feel much with the story itself, but it felt a lot more playing with friends. It was more the getting to play with them than the story itself.
There are just 2 points of absolute emotion that I remember. Just utter confusion. I had no idea what was going on, and when I was playing and I reached the part in which the stranger talks to us and tells us about how she doesn't have time to tell us how she doesn't have time, I felt betrayed and absolutely enraged.
For the most part, I was just disappointed. I saw the events leading up to Destiny, it looked like they were trying to build something huge, but it just didn't live up to the hype. There are things in the trailers that aren't in the actual game, and I was just underwhelmed for the most part.
I wish that the weight of the world was on my shoulders, and I was really disappointed that I did not get that feeling in the game.
Stuck with me the most is, all ends are you say all ends are beginnings, but I really don't feel like anything began.
I remember when I first completed the story, or what story there was, I guess you could call it, my first reaction was, that's it?
Honestly, not much of the story itself stuck with me. Definitely had the most fun and most emotion playing with friends.
What stuck with me the most regarding the story, I would have to say, god damn it, this fucking ghost is terrible. But really what pissed me off was just how he was supposed to be our only interaction, yet he felt so bland. It felt representative of the game as a whole, that I felt alone, I felt isolated, and I felt like I was in an environment that didn't want me to enter.
At the end of it all, it just really failed to immerse me. It felt like it was trying to do too much with too little. I was very disinterested in the characters and just the story as a whole.
The first thing that comes to my mind, I don't really know. Nothing really stands out in Destiny 1 because there's no real weight to the story or these characters.
All these aliens really don't feel very threatening. It's just something to shoot at. Just constantly slaughtering aliens, and at the end of it, I really don't feel like I've accomplished anything.
You see, we need a deeper connection to the media we digest. We need to get some value beyond simple entertainment. We need memorable characters, a clear tone to express emotions. We need something of tangible substance and an interesting universe where it all takes place. And Destiny don't have none of that. It's a tone-deaf, emotionless experience that makes you feel empty, makes you feel like you wasted your time, and that's the absolute worst thing a story or game can do. Now, I think we all understand Destiny went through some shit in development, and I know game design is not easy, and we can all be sympathetic to Bungie when things don't go according to plan. I mean, I could forgive Halo 2's shortcomings based on how passionate I saw Bungie and their Vidocs, based on how good the game actually was when it released, and how revolutionary it was. But there's no way the development of Destiny could have been worse than Halo 2. There's no way. So how did it turn out to be one of the worst video game experiences of all time? Fuck if I know, but when you got Marty O'Donnell, Joe Staten, Jason Jones, and you're wasting their talents, and these prominent, highly talented people are leaving Bungie, that sends a pretty clear message. I think most people would agree Halo 2's faults were a result of Bungie's own ambitions, and not because of the intervention of Microsoft. In this case, I think it's the other way around. Bungie was super confident in what they're doing, but Activision felt the need to fuck about and fuck it up. It seemed to be creating a cool universe and all the pre-release material we saw.
Why don't you put that down so we can talk?
Out here in the wild, this is how we talk.
Like this one line from the trailer has more character development, has more power than anything in the actual game. This single line of dialogue. And what we got was a corporate lifeless product that has almost no artistic value or soul. I think Bungie sold their souls to Activision, and whatever creative freedom they sought was not what they had in mind. The result being the bastardized version of Destiny we got at release. What Destiny does better than most other games, and I'm dead fucking serious when I say this, is help me to understand what it is I value in a game by showing me how to do everything wrong in a video game. Because after beating it, I don't feel like I got anything. I don't feel like I learned anything or experienced something valuable. Now there's one more point I'd like to make, and it's in regards to the most shocking and striking thing about Destiny as a whole. Despite everything I've and many others have said about it, the game is not something that has become so bad it's good. I mean, when a story or game falls in the category of terrible by every stretch of the imagination, you know that story or game at least has the redeeming quality of providing entertainment, albeit from failure.
You must be kidding, aren't you?
But Destiny was completely devoid of entertainment. It's too professional in the sense that we can't laugh at its technical flaws. It's hard to make fun of the acting because every character lacks emotion. I mean, this wasn't some low-budget B-movie. This wasn't a game so immensely incompetent that simply looking at it could cause you to burst out laughing. No. Destiny, as a whole, was just unpleasant. That's honestly the best way I can sum it up. I'd say the real entertainment comes from people tearing this game apart. And I think that speaks volumes when a game like Ride to Hell Retribution is more entertaining than Destiny. Nobody is going to look back at Destiny in 10 years and be like, oh yeah, I remember that random robot chick that said stupid vague things and then disappeared. Oh man, that was so awesome. Oh dude, remember when those 3 robots showed up and you killed them? Yeah. But it is a game that you can play and have fun with your friends and make fun of, and that's really all it has going for it in my opinion. I think there's a very important distinction to make between AAA and indie games and the expectations of both. I don't download a free-to-play indie game called Speedrunners and expect a fantastic immersive story. What I expect is a fun game. However, what I and so many others expected from Destiny, being the full-price AAA title it is, made by a previously respectable as fuck game company, we all expected something that would make us care. Something unique, beautiful, interesting, something of value. From a game of this magnitude, you should expect and get some value beyond the gameplay itself. And in essence, that is what Destiny failed to provide in every way possible. And that is why Destiny's campaign is so bad.